Uh, a very good afternoon to everybody and welcome to the latest Institute National Branch meeting. I'm just letting the numbers rise a little bit. It's good to see, as normal, that these are well-registered events, so I'm just letting the participants join before I run through a couple of slides before introducing and then handing over to today's speaker. I do hope everybody's well. I do hope everybody's keeping well, and everybody is looking forward to working our way through the roadmap as hopefully personal business life returns to some form of normality. But as I say, I hope you're well. As we always do at the beginning of any Institute webinar, just a few housekeeping rules for all. Please bear with us. We always say this, please bear with us if we have any technical issues, whether they be sound or visual. We will look to resolve those as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Sometimes, though, we have found from previous events that it is actually your connectivity or Wi-Fi, so please do check that as well. Can I ask everybody just to make sure they know where the Q&A button is on their screen? Some have it at the top, some have it at the bottom, you might have it at the left or the right. I ask you to just sort of know where that is, because that's your mechanism, that's your route to ask questions of today's speaker. And I know throughout his presentation that he's going to just ask for some yes or no answers from all of our participants. So please do make sure you know where that is. We want your questions, we want your engagement. Just for everybody's record and knowledge, today's webinar is recorded. Couple of points I just want to mention before we move on, and these come out of, or the top three come out of last week's webinar that John Edwards ran, looking back, looking forward, and there were a number of questions and probably themes that came out of that webinar that I thought it was useful on the next national branch meeting, just drawing everybody's attention to. The Institute have a digital version of the print magazine, Financial Accountant. That digital hub is called Financial Accountant. You can access it, you can find it via www.financialaccountant.co.uk. There's a host of content, information and articles on there, but from the recent branch surgeries that we've had, some of those articles that seem to be resonating with people, and you'll find on the hub, are an article about the reverse charge that's coming into play very shortly, IR35, another change that comes into force in April, a number of frequently asked questions around VAT and Brexit, pensions and pensions planning, and the whole topic of funding, which I think is vitally important in the current climate we find ourselves in. So please do take a look at the digital hub. We have a members support group that has been set up since we all entered lockdown and the pandemic took hold nearly a year ago. That is run, staffed, supported by the Institute's local branch ambassadors. We have a budget coming up where no doubt there will be further government announcements and changes. That group is there to support and help you, to provide guidance, support, guidelines, assistance. It's on the Institute's website. If you need support from one of those branch ambassadors, from a member, please do make contact with the group either via telephone or email. The other thing that came out of last week's webinar was the website. The website, again, has a host of information within it. You have, as a member, a specific member-only area. Please do access that, take a look at it, review it, familiarise yourself with it. If there's anything that you can't find, come back to me or colleagues, and we will happily guide you accordingly. My last reminder from this page is just about renewals, membership renewals. I hope that a number of you, most of you, all of you on today's session have renewed your membership, and where it's applicable, your member firm renewal and return. Those of you who haven't, please do look at that and action it as a matter of urgency. I'm talking about your member firm fee and your member firm declaration, as well as your member renewal fee and your member declaration. Both the fees and the declarations are vitally important, and they must all be actioned for you to have renewed your membership. Any questions, do let me know on that. Last slide from myself before welcoming today's speaker is just a reminder about up and coming IFA webinars and CPD. The Starting Out in Practice series started this week, but the second and the third sessions are on the 2nd and the 9th of March. There are a couple of technology-led webinars coming up with reference to filing, whether that be accounts, self-assessment, and making tax digital. One is on the 2nd of March, another is on the 11th. The tax series started yesterday, but the 2nd and the 3rd sessions run on the 3rd and the 10th of March. Most of you will be aware that we have run for a number of months now, monthly accounting treatment, financial reporting webinars. The next is on the 4th of March, and there is a quarterly financial reporting update on the 25th of March. Branch meetings, as I've said before, we will be holding 2 of those every month moving forward online. In March, they are on the 11th around grant funding, and on the 23rd of March around, investing in the post-pandemic arena. As we go into April, we are running a charities-led webinar, and that's a basic introduction to charities and independent examination work. Fantastically, the branch surgeries, those locally held events, came back to life this month. Members getting through the January self-assessment deadlines have been taking part in those. It's been fantastic to see the attendance numbers across the branch network have increased, and the participation from those attendees has increased. If you're joining us from Northern Ireland today, there is your local branch surgery this afternoon at 5 o'clock. If you're in Essex or East Anglia, your local branch meeting is on Monday, the 1st of March. If you're in Kent, the following Monday, the 8th of March. And for Leeds and Yorkshire, your next branch surgery is on the 17th of March. For other branches that have held an event in February, the next local branch event is in April. So we look forward to you registering and attending those. Enough from me though, and I'd very much like to move on to welcome today's speaker. And I thank Shane Lucas for joining us this afternoon. And for taking the time to talk to us. I'm intrigued and I look forward to hearing what he's got to say. He's talking about how to guarantee a sustainable £1 million practice or more working a 3-day week. I'm intrigued. But Shane has worked with over 3,000 accountancy practices over a 22-year period. He has a passion for helping those practices become more profitable with less effort and a lot more enjoyment. That to me sounds wonderful. He's an author and a writer of a number of books. He has a network both in the UK and overseas, and I know he will talk about one of his books or his most recent books as he talks. But Shane talks on a number of subjects: pricing effectively, attracting better clients, improving skills in leadership, cultivating and developing a greater team culture. So he's an expert within the accountancy arena. He's worked with accounting practitioners for a number of years. I'm delighted to welcome Shane this afternoon. I look forward to his talk. Please fire questions for him, at him through the Q&A facility. Shane, good afternoon. I will stop sharing my slides and I will allow you to move nicely into yours. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Jonathan. I wasn't expecting that much of an introduction, so I really appreciate those kind words as well. And welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today. What I would love as a starting point actually is for you just to say hello in the chat box. But before you do that, just change the setting at the bottom from just panelists to panelists and attendees. That way everybody else can see whatever you're typing in the box as well. So all panelists and attendees, and also just in addition saying hi, whereabouts you're from right now, where are you situated? That'll be fantastic. So already I can see Zulfikar, Luciano, Abdul, Graham, Kamzal, Faisal, Saeed, Samuel. Wow, the list's really whizzing past me now. Victoria, David, Syed. So lots of hellos. Thank you very much for that coming in. Please keep them coming in. I see you from Birmingham and London, Scotland. Brilliant. London again, Newcastle, Essex, Kent. Okay, wonderful stuff. Oh, Zimbabwe, Ireland, Crawley, Leeds. Excellent. Yeah, you keep those coming in. That's fantastic. Okay, now in this session, I want it to be a lot more interactive. So please do type in any questions that I ask, put them into the chat box, your answers. Any questions that you've got, put them into the Q&A box, and that'll just keep those separate. If I don't spot your Q&A question and Jonathan feels that it's worth interrupting me to ask that question, very happy for that to happen. So, you know, that can just be asked. Otherwise, I will address any Q&As at the very end of this session as well. So let's dive in. Let me just flick my slides on. I'm just going to pull my screen down slightly so I can step back and preferably not lose my head in the process. Okay, so today's session, as Jonathan has said, how to guarantee a sustainable £1 million practice or more on a 3-day week. Now, I use that title for a very good reason, and I shall share that with you very shortly. But ultimately, this is more about choice. It's about having the choice rather than just being stuck in a rut, just trying to be as profitable as possible within your practice. It's about creating choice. So in this session specifically, in the next 60 minutes or less really, probably 45 minutes, I'm going to be sharing with you a three steps of a proven blueprint to help you create a much more successful practice. Now, I recognise that not everybody on here may be running an accountancy practice right now. Some of you may be an accountant in industry, perhaps some of you are yet to start up a business, but I gather the majority are in practice. Now, I run this session on a regular basis. Everything I'm going to share with you today can be applied to the industry that you might be working for, as well as for, you know, your own practice and your own clients. So there's lots of learning for everybody here. You may just have to think about how you'll apply or universal across any business. Okay, so I think a good starting point is, what do I mean by successful? You know, that word there, success, means something very different for everybody. So what I would really like to do is just get you, I'm just going to share with you some scenarios here, and I would like you in the chat box just to tell me which of these existing case study examples perhaps most create yourself. Now, I'll share with you the starting points and where they got to. I'm only sharing the starting points so that you can see that you don't have to already be maybe 3/4 of the way there to achieve this. One of the most extreme examples here is Phil. Phil was turning over just 50k for 2 or 3 years. It kind of hit a glass ceiling. He was pretty much broke. He was barely making a profit because the house he'd bought when he was still employed was a much higher level of mortgage than he could currently afford, and he wasn't building that business up. So he was completely broke. He was working 70 hours a week, and he was just doing everything in that practice. Now, he made the leap. He decided to work with us, His aspiration was £1 million practice on a 3-day week, and that's why I chose this as the title for today's session, because he did everything I'm going to talk you through. And within 4 years, he achieved his £1 million practice working a 3-day week. And as you can imagine, his lifestyle massively improved as a result of that as well. Another example, Paul. Now, he was at a very different position. He'd actually bought the equity out of 5 other partners as they retired one by one over time. So he'd acquired this monster of an accountancy practice, but actually it wasn't very profitable by any stretch. It was employing 30 employees for 800k turnover. And he himself was at the beck and call of all of his clients. He was working himself 70 plus hours a week. Within just a few years, he turned that around. Well, within just a few months, actually, he turned it around to be much more profitable. But his journey has continued. When we last spoke just a few months ago, he'd exceeded 6 million. And he works, well, he said half a day a week. I've put 1 day a week on there just to play it safe. He said sometimes he's in longer meetings, but ultimately just gets involved in leadership meetings. And then finally, example C, not everybody wants to build an empire. Jane was actually at 220k turnover in her practice. She was working with over 200 clients. She got 5 team members and she was working around 60 hours a week. But some of the things she told me when we had dinner together at one of our previous masterclasses was that she says, number one, I hate having a team of people. I'm not very good at managing people, but I love working with clients. She says, I don't want to do any compliance work anymore. I absolutely hate that. But I do really want to get more involved in business advisory with my clients. 7 months later, when I caught up with her, she was turning over less, 160k, but working with less high income clients, delivering a much better service to them. No team, outsource 100% of the compliance work. She's now currently working a 3-day week and taking home 100k of income from that. Whereas before, she was struggling just to take home around the sort of 25k. So massive, massive transition for all of those. Which of those outcomes, not necessarily the starting point, that's irrelevant, but which of those outcomes, A, B or C, in the chat box, would most closely match your idea of what you'd love to aspire to maybe within the next 3 to 4 years yourself? So we've got A, we've got C, more A. So keep them coming in.
Yep.
Okay, so we can see it's generally the A's and C's that are the standouts here. I usually get a few B's in here, but not today, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, so we've got, well, 2 is the second one down, which is the B. That's cool. A few more B's appearing, but mostly it's between that A and C. Now, all 3 of these, despite them having a different idea of success, a different vision, all went through the exact same methodology. Because once you've got these fundamentals in place in your practice, it's just a matter of personal choice how much you scale up or not that practice. And what's important is being able to scale up a practice without that adding to your own personal burden of how many hours a week you're having to work. You know, most people think, well, in order to grow my practice to this, I have to work harder to get there. It doesn't have to be the case. Okay, let me share with you what I'm going to be covering specifically in this session today. First of all, I want to share with you exactly why most accountants don't achieve the level of success that they'd like to be, and why they won't unless they make some fundamental changes. But I do want to inspire that you can create your dream practice. I'm going to share with you 3 steps of a proven blueprint to a much more successful practice. I should be sharing those with takeaway items today, takeaway actions. I'd like to give you a free copy of my latest book that Jonathan alluded to earlier, and also invite you to take an online practice performance assessment for free, no obligation in any of those things. This is my latest book, Putting Excellence into Practice. I've been told time and again that this has changed my life from people. And so, you know, I highly recommend that you read that book. You can listen to it audibly or read it. And I shall give you a link to do that at the end of this session. And of course, the practice performance assessment will ask you a number of questions, and it will give you first of all, a visual graph, as you can see where your strengths and weaknesses are in your practice, but also It will give you some specific recommendations on how to make improvements to the areas that are weaker. So hopefully you'll get lots of value from those things as well and in this session. Of course, any questions you've got whatsoever, put them into the Q&A box in the meantime rather than the chat box, because the chat box might get lost. As you've just seen, you know, since all the hellos, I've asked another question and they've got lost. If you ask a question and suddenly I ask another one in there, it's going to get lost. So keep them in the Q&A. Now then, why most accountants aren't successful and won't be. In order for us to really understand this, we need to kind of take a look back, because the decisions and actions that we took yesterday are the reasons why we're here where we are right now. I'm sure you'll agree with that. You know, the thinking that got us here won't necessarily get us to the vision that we'd like to achieve either. So, just for a fun few moments, we're going to have a This Is Your Life moment. And we're going to just start from the very beginning. That's a little earlier than we need to, but just for the fun of it. Once upon a time, you were born, and I've no doubt you're a beautiful little baby. And as you grew up, perhaps you used to do things that you just don't do anymore. Perhaps you used to take risks and get involved in things that you considered fun then, but maybe a little bit too risky right now. As you got older, perhaps you used to daydream about some of the things you'd love to do when you got older. Perhaps it was becoming an astronaut or a doctor, maybe the next prime minister, or perhaps even an accountant, who knows. Then you went to school, where perhaps 99% of those aspirations were extinguished almost overnight. And perhaps you met the love of your life. But certainly along the way, perhaps you made the decision, do you know what? I want to own my own accountancy practice. And when you made that decision, if you imagine this cup to represent the capacity in your everyday life, perhaps you decided that a certain amount of your time is going to be involved in running that practice. It's my business, it'll work on my terms, I'll just work the hours I want to work. So that's how much I'm going to allocate to running my practice. This is how much time I want to spend with my family and with my friends, and also on my health, pursuing my hobbies and activities, and, you know, exercise and general hobbies, the things that we really love doing. But sadly, over time, that practice starts to dominate much more of your life at the expense of your family and friends and on your health. Give me a yes or no in the chat box if you can relate to this so far. Has that happened to you? Is it happening to you right now? So lots and lots of yeses already appearing. Great to see a no in there, but generally there are yeses in there. So, you know, and this can happen, can't it? The business can start to dominate more and more of our lives. And when we just thought, you know, I'm going to be my own boss, I shall take the holidays I want to, I want to take the income that I want to, etc., the reality can become very different, can't it? So I appreciate some of you saying I've not started a practice yet. Okay. Now let's just explore the reasons for that. Some of the reasons are because of some of the mistakes that accountants make when they're establishing their practice. One of them, you know, it doesn't matter how long people have been in practice, I'm still staggered to discover that there are lots of people who don't have a clear strategy for what success in their practice looks like. And unless we have something to strive towards, we're just going to go around in circles, aren't we? We're not going to grow and start to achieve some of the milestones that we need to put in place. They often fall into the trap of competing on price and trying to undercut maybe the competition. They'll take on any client, which really gets you to just being all things to all people, doesn't it? They become the bottleneck in their practice. You know, everything's reliant on you. They don't look after their number one client. And of course, the number one client is the business, the accountancy business. If you don't look after that first and foremost, it can't then serve your clients. They rely on memory for customer service, which means sometimes those great bells and whistles that wow a client happen, and sometimes they don't. And the client thinks, well, what happened? They recruit staff. Now, I emphasize the word staff in quotes. I don't like the word staff, but I'm using it deliberately right now. It's a whole different presentation as to why I don't like the word staff. But they'll recruit staff purely based on their CV. And yet there are so many more important factors to consider as well. And they allow scope creep, you know, from the original proposal, lots of extra work coming in. I'm still seeing yeses in the chat box. Clearly you're relating to this. And also they don't maximise on client potential as well, which actually does the clients a disservice as well as yourself. Now, some of the consequences of these mistakes fall into these three areas. One of them is time. You know, you end up being at the beck and call of clients, you know, demanding things all of the time from you. Maybe you're having client meetings, whether it's on Zoom, face-to-face, on the telephone, they all want to speak to you. You're doing the work or you're double checking the work to make sure it's done to your high standard. If you have employees, quite often they can take up your time if they're bringing you more problems than solutions. When you're that busy, you run the risk of making errors yourself. Customer service can often suffer, can't it? You don't get the opportunity to spend with your best clients. You don't get the opportunity to work on your business, just in it and in it and in it and in it and in it. Technology is changing and evolving on such a regular basis, and you don't necessarily get the time to invest in understanding what's the best technologies to embrace right now, yet alone the massive changes in regulation happening all of the time. That's just time. There's also the income factor. You know, you're experiencing poor profits, undercutting or trying to, you know, keep up with the competition, whatever they're charging. Your profits are starting to dwindle as a result of that. Cash flow can start to suffer as well. If you, if your employees are bringing you more problems and solutions and you're having to spend a lot more time with them, are you really getting return on investment, or are they a cost? You know, you've got bills to pay that are ever increasing. You're competing with cheap accountants. You're under constant fee pressure. You know, people are saying, well, the accountant up the road said they'll do it for this. Can't you match that at least? They're also disputing the prices. Maybe that you've done some extra work for them, and then they're saying, well, I thought that was included. You're my accountant. Surely all of that's just part of the course. You give away a lot of free advice. Again, just give me some more yeses. Can you relate to this stuff so far? You're giving away a lot of free advice, and you feel that you're just really taken for granted. So again, lots of yeses coming in. And finally, for me, this is the most important. You know, you should enjoy running your business, and yet so many accountants say to me, you know, I'm just not enjoying it anymore. You know, my employees don't seem to have the same level of care as me. They're happy just to tools down at 3 or 5 or whatever time they finish, whereas I'm left working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I get a lot. Decided it's going to go on a mission here. They get a lot of hostility from clients. Stop beeping. I will get this on mute. There we go. You know, who are not happy with the level of turnaround, or maybe mistakes have happened, or customer service has been dropped. They're under constant relation. Who told me that because of running his business and spending so much time in it, not only did that culminate in a divorce from his wife, but actually his son and daughter barely speak to him as well now. You know, that's just awful, isn't it? So relationship strain at home, this just becomes unfulfilling and unrewarding. You know, you feel that you have no life, and even if you do get to take holidays, they're not always relaxing. You're getting your texts, your phone calls, your emails. You're effectively working from the beach. Your life ends up looking like this, doesn't it? Just one constant treadmill. Just trying to churn through the accounts, getting it out to clients, trying to keep your clients happy. 9 to 5, 8 till 6, 6 till 6, whatever it might be. And you end up falling into this trap of just same shit, different day, forgive my choice of language. But you know, whilst all this is happening, something else is going on as well. You're getting older and older and older, and you might keep thinking, you know, this time next year things will be so much better. If I just keep battling through, things will be so much better. But that just doesn't happen, does it? And before you know it, you're looking to retire. Sadly, I know so many accountants that are in their late 70s and even early 80s that just can't afford to retire. Their practice isn't worth what they need, and so they just have to carry on doing the same thing over and over again. There's a famous quote, we've all been subjected to it, but it's just as relevant, from Einstein, that says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It may be your business, if I'm speaking to those of you who own accountancy practice here, but if you're running it like a job, which many people do, they'll turn up, they'll do the work, they'll leave. They'll turn up, they'll do the work, they'll leave. That's running it like it's a job. Job stands for just over broke. There is a better way. Now, what's the real problem here? Now, over the past 11 months, people have thought that the real problem has been this pandemic. But actually, this pandemic has just been a catalyst, really, for people to, I suppose, recognise a lot of the changes that have been taking place. The real problems have been bubbling to the surface for a number of years. You imagine the old fable of placing a frog in a pan of hot water, it would immediately jump out because it recognises the environment is incredibly hostile. But if you were to place that frog in a pan of cool water and gradually heat it, it doesn't recognise the changes that are happening around it until it's too late. And that's happened for many years now to a lot of accountants. The real problem is that we live in now a very fast and increasingly faster paced changing world. Technology is just changing all of the time, it's improving all of the time. And yet so many accountants out there are still focused predominantly on the compliance work, the bookkeeping, the payroll, producing annual accounts for their clients. Now, just take annual accounts alone. From a business owner's point of view, they don't make easy reading. They don't show how they're doing compared to others in their industry. They don't identify strengths and weaknesses. They don't calculate scope for improvement. They don't even support decision making. It's out of date data. They don't show all of the numbers that matter. They're simply meeting a need for HMRC Companies House, not the needs of the clients. And therefore, as I'm sure you can appreciate, clients don't really value them very much. They have to get it done. If we have to get something done, then we'll seek out the cheapest service and just tick that box, won't we? And therefore, they don't want to pay very much for it. Annual accounts is effectively the equivalent of driving your car purely looking in the rearview mirror. That's dangerous. It's insane, isn't it? You wouldn't drive a car just looking in the rearview mirror. You'd be wanting to look ahead. In business, you need to be looking ahead, not just in the rearview mirror. Now, I want to inspire you that you can make a profound difference to your clients, and you can create your own dream practice in the meantime as well. Because firms that do things differently are getting radically different results. Now, here's some stats. This hasn't changed very much, actually. This is a couple of years old. I expected it to take a dramatic change, actually, during COVID, but it hasn't, because although businesses have been lost, even more have been established during this pandemic. And so the number is pretty much the same. There are 5.9 million businesses in the UK, 99.9% are SME. And that is a growing number every single year. And as I say, the past 11 months have seen a massive uptake. I wasn't able to get the exact stat for this slide, but it's shown a massive increase in new businesses being born all of the time. But what's incredibly sad is that the survival rate trend hasn't changed over the past 23 years that I've been working with accountants now. And I don't know what the impact will be on a lot of businesses once the COVID funding starts to stop. Maybe that'll get worse, I don't know. But I think what stands out for me is not only do 56% of businesses die within the first 5 years, but actually the government themselves used that word at the top there, which is survival. They're just surviving. Many of these businesses are also struggling with time, with profitability, and with their own enjoyment. And you, as their accountant, can do something about that. Why you? Well, I believe that accountancy is a noble profession that can make a profound difference. Not by doing this though, not by being stuck in the compliance area. Let me just explain this pyramid for a moment. This pyramid really represents the labels within it, represent the types of services that an accountant can offer to its clients. Now, just starting with the bottom there, we've got compliance. Compliance speaks for itself. It's your payroll, it's your bookkeeping, it's your VAT returns, your tax returns, your year-end accounts, all fall under this compliance area. Business services is offering management information in the form of management accounts on a monthly, quarterly basis, cash flow forecasting, budgeting. Those types of services would fall under business services. Growth solutions is providing a strategic input into your clients' businesses. Not just being a financial, a virtual FD, but actually providing much more strategic input on all aspects of their business as a paid for service on a monthly or a quarterly basis. And then finally, there's wealth strategies. Now, not everybody gets involved in these, but this might be offering services like exit planning, merger and acquisitions, perhaps even pensions. Some of that you might outsource to an IFA. Some practices will keep a lot of that internal as well. Now, the higher up in this pyramid you are delivering services, the greater the fee you can generate, because clients really value this stuff up here. They don't value this stuff down here, and so it's very difficult to price beyond the competition in those areas. And therefore, if the majority of the services that you offer are down here, you have to work with a higher volume of clients to make that pay. Whereas if you're operating further up, you can afford to work with fewer clients. And so certainly what we do and what needs to happen more than ever before now is that accountants need to shift their core service from being in the compliance to being up into the growth solutions area. And your rivals are already moving up this triangle now. They are moving more into the growth solutions area. What happens if you get left behind if you're not in there yourself? And in addition to that, the technology has been proven year on year. In my book, I explain this in much more detail, but I was speaking to a software company just 2 days ago, and they said our aim is to make the accountant redundant when it comes to compliance. That is their aim, and they think that they're almost there now. With 6,000 accountants, but they also work with 600,000 business owners. And so getting into this area is important because the software already is chipping away at some of these services that you're delivering. Just think about, when I first got into this profession 23 years ago, most accountants would be employing a junior to do bank reconciliation. That's just automatic now, isn't it? It used to be a work of art on a spreadsheet to do. Most of that stuff's done at the click of a button now. What else is being replaced by the technology that maybe we're just not noticing, like that frog in water? And how long before business owners is challenging you and saying, I know you just click a button. Whether that's the reality or not, they'll be thinking, well, you just click a button, so therefore why should I pay very much for those services? Whereas if you're helping them grow their business, they will greatly value that. And certainly some of the members that we work with are charging anywhere between £10,000 and £100,000 per year per client in this area alone. Now, I'm sure that many of you are thinking, I will improve my practice someday. But unless we set a marker in the sand, that someday is always going to be maybe 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, and never getting any closer until perhaps it's too late. So the best time to decide to grow your practice, and the best time to put a marker in the sand, of course, is, well, first of all, we need to make a decision on one of those. Is it next week? Is it next year? It's got to be just one of those, hasn't it? It has to be now. If I'm going to take any step forward, I have to make the first step now. If I want to do a marathon, I have to start now. Otherwise, nothing's going to change, is it? Let me just share with you a couple of scenarios of the difference. Now, it doesn't matter what your current level of turnover is right now. Let's say it's 75,000 a partner, maybe it's 150, 500,000, 250, and let's just go with that. £250,000 turnover per partner. But let's say that the majority of your services are down at the bottom here. Now, that would make your average fee per client around the 1,200 mark. You'd have to work with over 200 clients to meet that kind of level of turnover. You're going to have to dilute the amount of profit you take because you're probably going to have a team to help support all of those clients, which means that you're not left with very much and you're probably doing this. Now, let's just change that a little bit. What if you were to work a little bit higher up this pyramid? As your core service, I'm not suggesting you don't do the compliance work, but it's almost, by the way, we'll help you grow your business, and if you want, we can do your compliance work for you as well. Now, let's take that same number up here. If we work up here, people happily pay a premium. Now, I've said between 10 and 100k, which some of our members get. Let's just say that you're offering a service at £600 a month just for the growth solutions, and you're including some of the compliance work in there as well. So your average fee per client becomes 7,200. For that, you only need to work with 35 clients. And, compliance work, maybe you can insource to a smaller amount of team, or you can outsource it completely. Many of our firms, and I mentioned Jane earlier on, outsource 100% of the compliance work and just delivers an advisory solution to her clients. When you do that, you start to make much more of a profound difference, and you get to spend much more time on the beach or doing other things that you really enjoy doing as well. Now, you might be thinking, well, yeah, Shane, that's all good and well, but I don't have the right clients, or I don't live in the right area. I don't have the right team, or, I don't think I could deliver that. Well, if you check out our website, avn.co.uk, and go into the testimonials part, you'll find case study after case study after case study of people who thought exactly the same things, and yet they've turned their practice around massively. And if they can do it, and they're from all parts of the UK, in fact, some of them are from overseas as well. We've got South Africa, we've got America, Canada, different parts of the world, and yet they have all made massive changes to their business. So you can do this too. We'll get to the end of here and progress. Here we go. Now look, it doesn't matter how good a vision you've got in place. It doesn't matter how much you want that stuff. I'll come to that. Just put that question, Aid, into the Q&A, which I can come to then shortly. I can't quite understand it at the moment, so please put it in the Q&A and we'll address that at the end.
Yeah, I'll do that. Not a problem.
Spot on. Thank you. So look, a vision without a strategy just remains an illusion, doesn't it? And a strategy without tactics is the slowest route to success. But I said earlier that accountancy is a noble profession, one that can make a profound difference, and it deserves to get really well rewarded for it. Now, I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes. I'd just like to, I'm going to come on to that proven strategy in a moment, but I needed to set the scene for it first, because if I share this strategy, but you don't really think, well, it's not going to apply to me, then you're not necessarily going to buy into it. So I'm going to share that very shortly, and I'll share with you the link to get those bonuses as well. Just like to very quickly introduce myself. I know Jonathan's done me a great amount of justice there, so I will make it quick, but I think there are certain things that I'd just like to share that are important to me. First of all, I want to share with you my purpose, my why, if you like. My purpose is in helping really improve people's ability to make better lifestyle choices. And I do that on three levels. One, the brain itself is entirely responsible for our ability to make choices, isn't it? If that becomes injured in some way and becomes damaged, that can inhibit our ability to make choice. So I do a lot of fundraising in my own time. I do Ironmans, I do marathons and various other ways to raise money for charities that help people recover from severe brain injury. There are also people that are around, from around the world that don't have the luxury of some of the lifestyle choices that we have and take for granted. Not just outside of the UK, but obviously inside the UK as well. And so through my business AVM, we do a lot, we're aligned with the global goals. You can just see that slightly in the background here. We're aligned with the global goals, and we contribute on a regular basis to impacting on people around the world. And of course, much closer to home, people in business, and accountants no exception, who feel they have no choice but to keep working an endless amount of hours just to put food on the table, pay the bills, keep the business going, to employ the team, etc. And so, you know, I do whatever I can personally and through my business to help people there as well. Now, over the years, I've written and co-authored a number of books that really support that purpose. And, you know, I've already shown you my latest book there, Putting Excellence into Practice. Just a little bit about AVN. We are AVN Inspiring Accountants. That's what we do. We inspire accountants, and we are a coaching and training organisation for accountants. We're one complete community, whether the people are overseas or in the UK. We have our Facebook groups. We all meet on a regular basis. We share ideas. It's a great community. We take them through our 7-stage signature roadmap that I'll be sharing with you an element of very shortly. To date, we've actually worked with far more than that now, but over a 23-year period, we've now worked with over 3,500 accountants collectively. And through those businesses, we've impacted on over 600, through those accountants, sorry, we've impacted on several thousand businesses, as well as the impacts that we've made globally through our alignment with the United Nations global goals. So I just wanted to just really set that scene about AVN. You know, we've saved marriages. I mentioned someone earlier that didn't have the luxury of that, but we have saved marriages. Phil earlier, for example, is one of them, and children actually exist because we've done that. We've reduced blood pressures. We've enabled time on the golf course or whatever those activities are that are important to them. Yes, we've created millionaires, but ultimately we've given them a greater sense of fulfillment, and we've changed lives. I feel that the traditional accountant's future isn't going to look that great. I think, you know, from an effort point of view, they're going to have to start working with more clients to really generate the income if their profits are dwindling, which means the effort to do that is only ever going to go up. The income, really, the profitability is just going to continue to come down. Their level of enjoyment is only going to come down as they're working tirelessly within their business, and you know, their ability to make a difference is also going to come down. And actually what we do within AVN is completely transform that, so that people are getting much more enjoyment, much more profitability, and much more less effort as they make a profound difference. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just share 3 steps of this proven blueprint with you right now. And it's, as I say, it's 7 steps in total, but I'm just going to do the first 3 today in this session. My book goes through all of them and in significantly more detail than I'm going to cover right now. So the first one is about clarity. It's so important that we get clarity. I mentioned earlier, didn't I, having a clear strategy about our vision. So in clarity, and I'm sort of sharing this through the eyes of the lens of how we work with AVN members. Clarity is about starting with the end in mind, really understanding what they want to achieve. From that, we can reverse engineer that back and put a vision strategy in place where they know step by step what needs to happen next, what needs to happen next. We'll help them get much more clarity on the types of clients that they'd really love to work with and the kinds of services that those clients would be taking from them. From that, then we help them put a marketing strategy in place so they're attracting many more of those types of clients and they can say goodbye to the poor profitable ones. We help them to put a pricing strategy in place as well so that they're taking on better quality clients at greater, more profitable but value-based fees. As long as the value outweighs the fee, people will happily pay a premium. Of course, that stabilizes and improves their profitability and their cash flow. And from a quick wins point of view, throughout clarity, which is normally a 3-month process, they're getting much more time back, they're increasing their income, and they're much more importantly having more fun. Now, everybody that we work with gets a coach. I highly advocate, if you're not working with a coach right now, work with a coach. Everybody who's a success in business hasn't become a success and then decided to work with a coach. They've worked with a coach which has accelerated their journey to becoming successful. So we supply coaches to every single member that we work with on a one-to-one basis. They will challenge them, they will hold them accountable, they'll act as a sounding board, they will hold their hand every step of the way. So having the right coach is imperative, and I recommend, as I say, be on the lookout for a coach. Find yourself a coach. But these things are important. There has to be a values match between you and them. Otherwise they'll be getting you to do things that you just don't feel comfortable about, that goes against your values. Now, it's important to step outside of our comfort zone, but as long as our values are not being affected. And they have to have the right attitude. They have to have a great reputation. They have to prove they get consistent results. If they've only got one success story in every 100 people they've worked with, that's not great. You know, from my point of view, I guarantee value in every single month or your money back. And I would recommend that whoever you look out for, find out if they guarantee the value they deliver or their money back. If they don't, they're not 100% sure in themselves and their own abilities, are they? They have to have great business experience and, of course, great business acumen. There's a lot of people who've maybe failed in business and then decide to become a coach so they can help other people not fail, but they don't necessarily have the acumen to be able to do that. The learning that they took and then transformed themselves into a great business. And for me, I think pure coaching skills is important. There are lots of people who will tell you what to do, but pure coaching is about developing you as an individual. And these are the things that are important to me. And I map all of those out in one of my other books as well, called What's Next for Accountants. That's just an element of it, talking about the right kind of coaching qualities. Now, what that coach will help them do, as I say, they'll come up with this vision, but then from that vision, you can start to have lots of ideas. Okay, I need to do this, I need to do that. That can become overwhelming. So the coach there is also to help them to identify, well, what needs to happen in what order? What's the most logical order? Now, pay no attention to that. That's just a list of, just for demonstration purposes more than anything else. But ultimately, the coach will help them to prioritize the order specific to their practice so that they're getting the quickest wins in there. And of course, then the next question is how. So we run workshops. My recommendation to you is that you are constantly educating yourself in business skills, not just in your CPD for accounting. You know, we run implementation workshops where we talk about pricing and marketing and adding value and developing your leadership skills. And the way that we run them is important as well. You know, we believe that environment dictates performance. Getting people, obviously pandemic aside, out of their office if we can, into a physical environment. We've been running these on Zoom, of course, recently, where they're in the same room as other accountants that are going through similar things, where they can bounce off each other. We've been doing these in breakout sessions, of course, using Zoom recently. But where they're with like-minded peers, they're getting expert training from the front, but also it's not just lecture style like I'm doing now, talking to the camera. This is about hands-on as well. You know, we'll talk about a strategy, then we'll get down next to you, kneel down beside you and help you thrash that out for your practice. And I believe that that combination helps people make stuff happen. Our REACH program is important to us as well. Now, I've shared with you some aspects of this. REACH stands for the roadmaps that I'm just talking through right now. Getting into the right environment that's going to make you the most productive. Having the coaching so that you are completely accountable. Being in a community where other people are going through similar things, where you can tap off each other. And the H stands for human to human. You know, I don't believe we're in this B2B or B2C type of environment anymore. I think it's more about the hand-holding, the human to human element. And that's certainly something that's incredibly important to us. Now, within just 3 months, what we tend to see the outcomes are for people is that in time, they're starting to increase their GRF significantly, but most of that goes straight to the bottom line because we've helped them to demonstrate their value and price their services better. That we've improved their conversion rates, their cross-selling much more, their stabilised their cash flow, their work in progress is reduced, and generally, certainly from an AVM point of view, that is paying for itself and then some. Time, of course, is important, so we help them improve productivity. We help them to get to a position where they can afford to fire some of those time-consuming, low-profitable clients because they're replacing them with more income from their existing ones or better clients. They're empowering their team to take more action as well, or they're outsourcing. And from an enjoyment point of view, you know, they're starting to enjoy much more of what they do. So, you know, Peter Fry, for example, is just one. You know, I said 3 months, an internal benchmark for us is 5 times return on investment. He increased his revenue by 60%, but actually generated a 17 times return on investment, spending much more quality time working in his business, from 7 days to 4+1 in the business, on the business. And he's enjoying what he's doing. He's got his team on board with systemization, etc. Phil Ellaby, another great example of some of the quick wins that he achieved. And you know, the list goes on for people who are just massively transforming their firm. I'd like to give you an action to take away from this, and that is just to identify 10 businesses in your area that you would love to work with, and just come up with some kind of wanted poster. This can be your backdrop, you know, on your Zoom, if you're using Zoom. And a lot of our members do this. They'll put something like a Dom Perignon or something like that as a bit of reward. Don't make it financial, make it a gift. Just say, if you can introduce us to any of these businesses or anyone like them, then there's a bottle of Dom Perignon in it for you. That tends to generate a lot more referrals than just saying, by the way, if you know anyone we could work with, let us know. Okay, now I'm going to move a little bit quicker because I'm conscious of time. Positioning is the next one. Positioning, we have to position ourselves as very different from our competition and stand out. Otherwise, we're just going to be treated the same way. You know, many people are just seen as the, you know, one accountant's the same as the next. We need to separate from that. But actually, you know, most accountants in my experience don't help themselves either, because they'll represent themselves in exactly the same way as every other accountant out there. This is a mock-up website, but if you were to Google websites of accountants in your area, you'll find these buzzwords. They'll all say we're accountants and business advisors, we're different, we're proactive, we're forward-thinking, and yet they all go on to say, you know, we do accounts, we do bookkeeping, we do payroll, we do audits, whatever it might be. And it doesn't matter what kind of graphics you've got, all the images, all the colour schemes, they all effectively say the same things. If you position yourself exactly the same way as your competition, the only deciding factor from a potential client's point of view is price, isn't it? Whereas if you can differentiate yourself sufficiently, yes, you're going to have a core servicing in common, you can differentiate yourself sufficiently. The only differentiator then is value. And as long as your value proposition meets that of your prospective clients, then they're going to choose you over and above the competition, even if they're paying significantly more. Lots of people say to me that, you know, I can't find the right clients, maybe it's just the area I'm in. Clients around here aren't interested in growing the business. We all fish in exactly the same ocean of clients. And in that ocean, there are large fish, there are small fish, there are bottom feeders, there are painful clients, there's small clients, and there's the quality ones. And you know, it's all determined by the bait that you use as to which of these you're going to attract. If you're getting small fish, you're using the wrong bait. You use the right fish, then you can get right bait. You can attract the kinds of quality clients that you really want to work with. So positioning, really, when we take people through, it's about positioning them as an expert, establishing their vision, their values, their purpose, and communicating that effectively to attract the kinds of clients that are aligned with that. Differentiating beyond price, we help them become the author of their own book. Putting in for awards and accreditations, please take that as an action as well. Put yourself in for awards, try and get additional accreditations because you'll stand out. They feature in a book that we've got called the UK's Best Accountants as well, once they've achieved the right level of criteria. Ultimately, this is about just getting better clients. The typical outcomes are they are generating much more income from those better clients. They're generating more work from them as well. A lot of the stuff that we help them put in place is high value but low effort, so their time is actually reducing, and of course their level of enjoyment is continuing to rise as well. Quick action point for you in positioning: don't just say you're different, brainstorm 10 reasons why you're different and explain how you're different as well. And communicate that on your website. I've said 10, but actually my bullet point here says 5, so you pick, but somewhere between 5 and 10. Now the final one I'm going to share with you today then is value. Value is really, you know, there are 3 elements to value. It's about increasing the value perception, adding much more value to your clients' core, the core products that you offer for your clients, but also increasing the value to your clients' businesses. Just put a yes in the box. Are you okay for another 5 minutes in this session? Or a no. I mean, if it's a no, I know this is being recorded. I literally have about less than 5 minutes left of this presentation, so fantastic. And thank you very much for that. I'm usually much more punctual than this. I mean, if you can stay for 30 minutes, if you've got questions, you know, I can be around as long as you like for questions, but my presentation will be less than 5 minutes now. So
I think that's a resounding yes, so please continue.
Will do then, thank you. I might just soften my pace a little bit as well then. You know, all of the stuff that we help accountants put in place are all marginal gain concepts. You know, if you could just make a 1% change here or a 2% change there and just demonstrating the difference that it makes. The point I'm making there is that you don't have to be an expert in your client's business industry to be able to help them to grow their business. Everything we talk about is utilising your natural skills as an accountant to help people improve their business. And, you know, as I say, the accountants we work with, they're ranging from just at this level, we do some high-end stuff later on, between £7,000 to £30,000 per annum per client, just delivering that kind of service. So look, let me just, these are the three main areas, as I say, that we help them improve upon, and we find that getting that balance right, it just really massively improves the service delivery and the value that they're delivering. So again, an action from your point of view is improve the value perception. What's the value perception from somebody when they first discover you? You know, if they discover you on a website, maybe it's a Google search, maybe it's a referral from another client. What's that value perception like? Because if they're told about you by somebody else, chances are they'll visit your LinkedIn profile or they'll just type your name into Google, not your practice name, but your own name. What does that look like? Maybe they'll visit your website. What's the first impression? And throughout this entire journey, right from being a client and being wowed every single month, what does that look like? Because if the perception starts off high and dips at any point, it's unlikely to come back to where it should be again. So we need to keep it high throughout. And the more you can wow every single one of your clients every single month, if not more, the more likely they are to be raving about you and referring you. I mentioned earlier that, you know, ultimately we help accountants shift from there to there. And we do that in a number of ways, partly by producing great reports that show maybe strengths and weaknesses that open up different kinds of conversations that you can have with clients that say, look, you know, you're strong in a lot of areas here, but there are some areas compared to your competitors where you can improve upon. Why don't we explore some of the ways that you could improve on that? Quite often clients will say, you know, my business is different, you can't get away with this, you can't do that. But actually when you can demonstrate to them, well, actually all of your competitors are doing this really well, why aren't you? Then that actually opens the mindset, the door, if you like, to having those kinds of conversations. There are many other ways, of course, but in this session I don't have time to talk about them right now. But you can tap into some of those tools as well. You know, even the likes of Futurely or Spotlight or Fathom will give you additional data that you can have those kinds of quality conversations with. So as I said, really, you know, these are about utilizing your natural skills as an accountant to deliver these kinds of services. Yeah, there are lots of different ways that you can help clients to improve their businesses. So the benefits that people start to see again are they're delivering much more packaged solutions to their clients that include business advisory as the norm. You know, they invest in their team much more and get them involved in delivering a lot of this stuff, including the advisory. As I say, it's more around the skills of the accountant. And of course, from an enjoyment point of view, well, they're generating much more income, they're reducing their time, but more importantly, they're finding this so much more fulfilling, they're having much better conversations with clients. Now, I want to give you a final action to take away. I mentioned earlier about maybe cross-selling more services to your clients. Few accountants do this, and yet one of the most common reasons a client will change accountant is because they discovered an accountant maybe down the road offers a service that they didn't think their existing accountant would offer. Now, most accountants don't talk about it because they feel that they're being salesy. So it's a bit of a catch-22 there, isn't it? The best thing you can do with your clients is to tell them on a regular basis the other types of services that you can offer to them. You know, you walk into McDonald's, you ask for a Big Mac, they're going to say, would you like fries with that? Did you know that we do this, etc. They will always tell you about extra stuff. It's a simple yes, no, whether you're interested or not, isn't it? But quite often they'll ask if you'd like fries with that or upgrade to a meal, and you usually say yes, please. By asking that question, McDonald's increased their average spend per customer against the original intention by 88%. So this is a windows of opportunity chart, and I recommend that you create something very similar. Across the top, just list every additional possible service that you could deliver to a client and think about what are the benefits, not just the feature, but what are the benefits to the client of you taking that off their hand or doing that for them. And then list every single client that you've got down the left. And then every time you speak to a client, you pick 2 or 3 of these, maybe linearly. Pick them and make sure that you speak to them. Only 3 in any conversation. And when you've spoken to them about it, you mark a T that you've told them about it, and you'd mark an S if actually you've told them about it and you've sold that product. And then you can keep a track on what you've spoken to your clients about and what you haven't. And that's a great way of just being a little bit more proactive about the stuff that you can do for them. Now, what we tend to see is that, you know, over time, over that 3-month period, at least people have started to get much more control of their practice again. 3 months is when we start to see this, and going forward, their time is continuing to improve, their income is improving, and their level of happiness is improving. Now, it might beg the question then, okay, I've got to hear, what if I want to continue to grow? Well, that's where the rest of the areas of the roadmap come in. That's for another day. But of course, you can shortcut that by getting a copy of my book as well. So, quick question. Do you see how what I've just explained could help you achieve your dream practice and lifestyle? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. So I've seen, yeah, so again, lots of yeses coming in. Well, look, what I'd like to give you off the back of this session is those bonuses, and then we'll have some time for Q&As as well. So once that chat box has settled for a moment, I'm going to put the link where you can grab a copy of my book, and then you'll automatically be invited to do this. And it's not just a digital copy, by the way. You can grab a digital copy now, but as soon as you've got that, you'll also get an email coming through saying, would you like a copy posting out to you? I don't care where you are in the world, I will post you for free a copy of my book. Okay, so to do that, I'm just going to click to put the link in this chat box. I'll use the correct mouse. So if you want to click on that link, either now, or I know that Linda is going to be sending this link out by email to you as well, then you can just visit that page, complete, you just want your name and email address in there so we know where to send those invitations to, and then you get instantly a copy of the book coming through to you. I will do, yes, thank you. My team member's asking if I would like a Costa coffee. Okay, so what are your questions? That's me pretty much done now. So any questions that come in, I'll be very happy to help with. Let me just turn my slides off and then I'm at your disposal.
Lovely. Shane, many thanks for that. I've got to say, from somebody who hosts or runs a number of institute webinars, I like the facility that you've been using. I like the stand-up approach as well. So there's a learning for me there as well from today. So look, anybody who hasn't seen the link in the chat box that Shane's just referred to, please do look at that, click on it, and then sort of action it. I'm just going to ask Shane, there was an Addy Wenmi, I do hope I've pronounced that correctly, who posted a question in the chat box facility, which was, can only you working with 35 clients in this service? Addy, I'm not sure quite what you meant by that question. If you could either expand on that in the chat box or in the Q&A facility, I'm sure Shane would be happy to answer it. My only take on that, Shane, because I think at the time you were talking about you'd got your pyramid and you were moving up from compliance, etc.
Yeah.
I think that was related to, is it possible if you're only working with 35 clients in the business growth solutions section or category, is it possible just to have 35 clients? But I am making an assumption there.
Yeah,
So
well, I'll be honest, that was the same assumption I made as well from that. So look, to answer the question, the category, yes. I mentioned Jane earlier, but Jane's just one example of many accountants. As I say, it tends to be those three areas that people want to go into. But the majority, the growing trend really is that more and more people are wanting to let go of their serviced offices or their buildings, maybe work from home more. One of our members, Alan, his name is, he only works with a maximum of 10 clients. He charges a fixed price, take it or leave it, of £30,000 per year. His predominant service is, I will help you grow your business. He has those 10 clients subscribed to him every single year. He's got a massive waiting list of other clients that would love to work with him as soon as some availability comes along. He only works 2 days a week, and he outsources the compliance stuff. So his turnover is 300k. He gets the lion's share of that because the outsourcing cost for 10 clients just doing their compliance work is minimal. And so, he's got a great setup that works for him. Now, he didn't get there overnight, which is why I explained the Jane example first and foremost. You don't have to run your practice in the conventional way. But, most accountants, this isn't meant to be a negative to accountants, but most accountants were trained up by accountants in practice that had done it that way. They'd been trained up by accountants in practice that had done it that way for many years. And, it's largely that traditional conventional way of, we need to work with anybody who walks through the door. We can't turn away any income, and that just makes you a slave to your clients. If you're working with 200-300 clients, then you're going to be really busy, or you've got to recruit a team of people to look after them, which dilutes the profits.
No, that's right. I'll come on to two questions. I've got a much easier one. Firstly, we're being asked, can I have the email address of the speaker? So you're right. My colleague Linda will email to all attendees tomorrow. Can we include your email address with that and the link for the book? Shane?
Yeah, by all means. And look, if you want me to, I'll put that into the chat box now, my email address. I'm very happy to be emailed. Look me up on LinkedIn as well, connect with me. That would be great. But I will just pop my email address into the chat box.
Okay. Whilst you're doing that, Shane, I'm going to move on to another question that was posed. Most of clients come for only statutory requirements, and these are very competitive, and fees is competitive.
Yeah,
advisory, we can earn more, but no much clients want. What can we do?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, this is where positioning comes in. I remember when we first put this together, one of the common pieces of feedback and almost resistance that we would have is that we'd be training accountants on how to deliver this advisory, but they were saying, well, actually, they're just not receptive to it. They don't see me as that kind of person that can deliver it. They just see me as a compliance accountant. And this is why positioning is really important as a starting point. You have to position yourself as very different. You have to represent yourself as being a professional. It's falling on the floor. Let me just pick up my book. I've written a number of books, as I've said, and that really positions me as very different from the people who haven't. One of the things that we help the accountants that we work with is to become an author of their own book. Now, within AVN, we have a shortcut to that because we've authored a book with a few areas where we just ask them to contribute. They are effectively then, genuinely a co-author of the book, but they don't have to contribute as much. But actually that allows them to then position themselves as very different. They've got their name on a book. They are giving that to somebody. And in that book, it talks of a lot of business strategies that a business can implement in their business. So you imagine, the most powerful business card you can give somebody is a book, isn't it? That really represents the ways that you could help them grow their business. chances are that they may flick through it, they may read it from cover to cover, but either way, they'll think, wow, this guy or this lady can really help me in ways that no other accountant ever has done. Most people will approach an accountant just for the rock bottom stuff because they don't know any different. And so, again, another recent conversation with a member, he says, quite often I'll get a phone call, can you just give me a price? I just want a tax return. It's bog standard, really simple. I'm just after the cheapest price. The first thing he'll say is, look, if you're just after a cheap price, I'm not right for you. Let me explain the kind of things I do for people. Now, if that's the kind of help that you would like, then we can have a conversation. Otherwise, look, I'll introduce you to some other accountants. And that really just changes that dynamic from almost being on the back foot, feeling obliged to give somebody a cheap fee, to say, no, that's not the way I work. This is what I do. This is the kind of value I'll deliver. Most people at the face of it don't feel that they are interested in business growth. I'm self-employed, or I've got a small business. I'm taking a good income right now. I'm not bothered about building an empire. But actually, I don't think I've met anybody yet who doesn't want to work less hours and earn a little bit more income. And in every situation, in every circumstance, there are ways to achieve that, through the strategies that you can share as an accountant.
Okay, no, that's understood. Thank you for the detail in your answer. Colin asks, what does membership to AVN cost?
There are a variety of different elements there. That is probably more of a conversation than I can have on here, because there's a lot of detail involved there. There are different levels. But look, more than happy to have that conversation. There's no obligations to that, of course. I'm not one of those horrible salespeople that once you're on the phone, I'm going to be twisting your arm. But I'd be very happy to understand your current situation first and just ascertain, is it something that we can help you with, of course.
Okay, Colin, can I suggest, I know Shane's put his contact details in the chat facility. Can you, or I would suggest you make contact with him offline. If you didn't see the email address, let me know and I'll kindly share that. A comment, I think, more from Howard. Shane, my focus is on community and environmental benefits rather than profit and growth, which isn't sustainable long term. I appreciate the strategies that may work more efficient, providing it's sustainable. I get plenty of recommendations from satisfied clients, but wouldn't charge more than they can afford. It's a fair comment. I think it's a different sort of philosophy and potentially outlook, isn't it? So
it is, but actually, it's not that dissimilar to many of the people we work with. One of my values, I mean, obviously there's only so much I can share in these, but one of my values is that I will only work with people when I'm having that initial conversation that I just mentioned, and I really want to understand people. What's important to me is that I only want to work with people who genuinely want to make a difference out there. They want to work with their clients to help them improve, not just for the additional income, but actually for the difference that they can make. And so, what you've just said there about the community and the environmental benefits are incredibly important. In terms of what people can afford, I suppose that is a choice, isn't it, as to whether you're going to work with those people or not. Obviously, if you want to work with them, then you have to decide, well, what elements can you maybe outsource that will make producing that work much more cost effective from your point of view as well. I know that there's one of the ladies that works with us, she's really passionate about, your white van drivers or people like that. But actually she started to create a model that is more of the high-end clients. So she's set up a separate business, a separate entity completely. She's employing trainees in that, which she's also giving her time to. The trainees are looking after those lower jobs, if you like, those lower income jobs. The trainees are looking after those. She's supporting them, and as the trainees get better and better, she's migrating them into the other business. So she's kind of ticking that box independently. There are lots of great options there, and what's important is coming up with a strategy that means that you can create a sustainable business going forward, because ultimately if you are just providing services at a rate that your clients can afford, if that's not serving your business or your needs, your basic needs, then as you quite rightly say in the box, is not sustainable. There has to be a balance, doesn't there?
No, Shane, thank you. I'm very grateful for your time. I'm also conscious of the time. There was a question in there as well about how can an accountant develop in practice. I think there are probably two ways from my side of looking at that. It depends where you are on your journey as an accountant, how much experience you have, where you want to go and develop, and your need to continually be learning and educating yourself. But also taking on board what some of I've heard this morning from yourself would be, if you're wanting to develop your own practice, look at those first three pointers you gave everybody: clarity, positioning, value, as well as that all links back to something else you said: strategy and plan. So yeah, no, thank you. There's also been, as you've been talking, answering some of the questions, Shane, there's been a number of very encouraging comments and thanks to you for your way and your style of presenting the content and the value that you've created this afternoon. So thank you. I think it's fair to say it's been extremely enlightening. I think it's been thought-provoking. And I think it probably has made everybody look at themselves, or hopefully it's made them look at themselves. And actually, something you said, put a marker down in the sand this afternoon and decide how you want to step forward from here. We will share Shane's details with you all within the next 24 hours. A number of participants have thanked Shane. Can I, on behalf of everybody, thank him for his time and for his energy and for his insight and information this afternoon. It's been absolutely wonderful. Really good session. Shane, I'm probably going to ask you offline as well, if you wouldn't mind coming back and doing something slightly different again for members in the future.
More than happy to.
That's an offline discussion. The only other thing I saw as a question, I think that's more from an institute-led perspective. Saeed, you asked about, does the institute have WhatsApp groups whereby we can share information with members? The answer is yes. That is centered and focused around our various local branches. Saeed, if you'd like more information, please make contact with me, Jonathan B at ifa.org.uk. Shane, you'll see the chat box at the moment filling up with thanks.
Yes, and very gratefully receiving those thank yous. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Look, to everybody who's been with us today, thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Shane, thank you for yours. Everybody keep well, stay safe, and have a good afternoon. But thank you all. Thank you, Shane.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.